Well, good evening, everybody. I should start by saying, my lords, rabbanim, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bevis Marks. My name is Lynn Julius, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome you tonight to this evening's event to remember the Jewish refugees from Arab countries and Iran. I am very honored to be standing in this magnificent synagogue, the oldest in the country. It was built in 1701. The Jews who built this synagogue were Sephardim, the first to be readmitted by Oliver Cromwell to these shores. And it is fitting that the latest wave of Jews to find a haven in Britain in the last 60 years should also have been Sephardim and Mizrahim, my parents from Iraq among them. We are grateful to the Sephardi community, and our thanks go to Maurice Bitton and to Rabbi Dweck. We are delighted to be... we are delighted to be co-hosting this event with them. This event is one of dozens taking place around the world, from Jerusalem to San Francisco, from Geneva to Liverpool, from Sydney to Los Angeles, from Amsterdam to New York. We even have one in Edgware. In case you were wondering, our colleague and friend Edwin Shukur is in Amsterdam. On the 23rd of June 2014, the Israeli Knesset passed a law designating 30th of November as a memorial day for Jewish refugees. Last year, we held two commemorative events in which the deputy ambassador and the press attaché of the Israeli embassy took part. This year, we are grateful and delighted that the Israeli embassy, represented by Ronnie Yedidia Klein, are full partners with us in this event. We hope that, like Holocaust Memorial Day, the event will enter the mainstream and restore Jewish refugees to the history books from which they have been expunged. For those who've not heard of my organization, Harif, let me tell you a little bit about us. We were founded exactly 10 years ago as the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa to promote the history and culture of Jews from the Arab and Muslim world. We have organized over 200 events, from film screenings to talks to debates to parliamentary hearings. We are a small organization of volunteers, and I am indebted to Michelle Huberman and Ralph Assor. Where are you? And, of course, my husband, Lawrence, for working so hard to make this event a success. Michelle, you have, with your creative flair, done much to transform Harif into a dynamic and exciting organization. Special thanks also go to Spiro Arc, represented here tonight by Robin Spiro, who have been with us on our journey from the beginning and have partnered us in so many events. So thank you, Robin and Nitsa. So what is this evening all about? This evening we are commemorating the exodus of 850,000 Jews driven from their homes in the Middle East and North Africa. Let's call a spade a spade. This exodus was ethnic cleansing. 99% of Jews living in the Middle East and North Africa were driven out. Only 4,000 remain. 4/5 of the Jews of Iran have left since the 1979 Islamic Revolution. Indigenous communities with a rich heritage and tradition, predating the Arab conquest and Islam by 1,000 years, these Jewish communities are on the verge of extinction. It's the greatest story never told. We are delighted that at last the Israeli government has decided to lift the veil of silence, given that over half Israel's Jews are either the descendants of refugees from Arab and Muslim countries or are refugees themselves. The Israeli government is actually bound by a Knesset law of 2010 not to sign a peace agreement unless compensation for Jewish refugees is on the agenda. So why the 30th of November? The date was chosen because it was the day after the UN passed Resolution 181 to partition Palestine. On the 30th of November, the Arab world erupted into a frenzy of anti-Jewish hysteria and violence. Riots broke out in Syria, Bahrain, and Aden. Synagogues and schools were burnt down, Jewish homes and businesses wrecked and looted, and in Aden, 82 Jews were murdered. The violence, coupled with Nuremberg-style state-sanctioned discrimination, caused the mass exodus we are commemorating today. However, even before the exodus, there is sound evidence that the Arab League was plotting all along to victimize their Jewish citizens and steal their property. Before Israel was created, and before a single Palestinian Arab refugee had left. So the Jewish refugees have been erased from history, and the facts have been turned upside down. Only last week, the UN passed a resolution reaffirming that the Palestine refugees are entitled to their property and to the income derived therefrom in conformity with the principles of equity and justice. And this resolution was passed by 157 countries, and only 7 voted against, and 6 abstained. This sort of thing, I'm sure you'll agree, is outrageous. But unfortunately, it's typical. Not a single resolution has been passed calling for the restitution of Jewish property, especially when you consider that there were more Jewish refugees than Arab refugees, and that they lost far more property. As long as the world persists in its myopia, it is the duty of every right-thinking individual, whether Jew or Gentile, to remind them, as a matter of law and equity, that 2 refugee populations emerged from the Arab-Israeli conflict. A peace agreement that ignores the human rights violations and suffering of the non-combatant Jewish refugees. That's human rights violations, sackings, arrests, internment, abductions, extortion, expulsions, travel bans, property seizures, confiscation, will not bring peace and reconciliation. As the ex-Canadian Justice Minister and human rights lawyer Irwin Cotler says, without truth, there can be no justice. Without justice, there can be no peace. Without peace, no reconciliation. But the Jewish refugee issue is more than simply a question to be resolved at the negotiating table. It is a symptom of the Arab and Muslim world's deep psychosis, an inability to tolerate anyone or anything different from itself. It is because the state of Israel embodies the non-Arab and the non-Muslim other that the Arab and Muslim world wants to destroy it. Refugees are much in the news these days. Muslim sects and non-Muslims are being persecuted in the Middle East, but people are apt to forget that the Jewish minority was one of the first. As our Christian friends here know only too well, first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. And it does not stop there. A state that devours its minorities ends up devouring itself. So the lesson the Jews have learnt is that to survive as a Middle Eastern minority, you need to have your own state and the power to defend it. As one pundit remarked, the only difference between the Israelis and the Yazidis is that the Israelis are the Yazidis with an army. Anti-Semitism is not just a byproduct of the Arab-Israeli conflict, it is its cause. Fundamentalist ideologies, many of them Nazi-inspired, have poisoned the relationship between Arab and Jew, between Muslim and Christian, between Muslim and the wrong type of Muslim. Next year, we will be observing the 75th anniversary of the Nazi-inspired Farhud in Iraq, in which nearly 200 Jews were murdered. This year, it was the 70th anniversary of the Tripoli pogrom, in which 130 Jews were killed. Both events predated the establishment of the State of Israel and paved the way for the dissolution of the Jewish communities of the Arab world. Totalitarian ideological forces, which arose in the first half of the 20th century, have bequeathed a legacy of genocidal bigotry and violence. That legacy is with us today in the atrocities in Paris, in Mali, and in the stabbings on Israel's streets. So what is it we want? We do not emphatically want to return to the Arab world. Despite the pain of their uprooting, Jewish refugees have rebuilt their lives, and they're counting their blessings that they got out of there. We have a lot to celebrate, in fact. We are grateful that we are all now full and free citizens of Israel and the West. But we do want our rights. We want justice. We want our rights to recognition and redress. We want our right to memory. We want our place in history. Thank you.